Well, a good Sunday afternoon to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist John Dawson in Houston, Texas, and this is our tropical update just for YouTube. Glad you found us on the social media. If you're not a subscriber to the Fox 26 channel, always encourage you to do so. There's other things besides the tropical updates, but this is really kind of where it's at as far as that goes. Remember, we're here every day of hurricane season, bringing you the latest on what's happening in the tropics. And today, a special day, because we'll be talking about both the Atlantic and the Pacific, because what's happening in the Pacific is actually going to be influencing us a little bit here across the state of Texas and other parts of the U.S. But I know this is more than just a Texas or U.S. audience that's watching, so I'm thankful if you're somewhere out there in the Atlantic Basin. Appreciate you finding us today. And we've got the same players, the same names that we've been using for a while are still on the board, and a new area that we could, not really a new necessarily, but another area that could possibly become named coming up. So this is Hurricane Tammy. Again, we've been watching Tammy for a while, been making its impact in the last 24 hours on the northern Leeward Islands. It's going to continue to track off to the north. Of course, we're going to look at that forecast here in just a second. This area of Invest, which is in the far southwestern portions of the Caribbean, is now bumped up to a 60% chance that it could make a tropical cyclone characteristics. It become a tropical cyclone. And really, it's kind of working with a short window, though. I think it's really going to have to happen within the next couple of days because it's kind of beginning to get a little bit too close to some land with some interaction there. But again, this is bumped up quite quickly from the National Hurricane Center and its probabilities of whether it would or not become a named system. So at this point, it favors that it would become at least a tropical depression, perhaps a tropical storm. Vince is the next name on the list if it were to become named. So keep an eye out, keep an ear out for Vince. That's the next named storm. If you hear that, this most likely is where we're talking about here in the Caribbean. And yes, over on the eastern Pacific, we're still monitoring Norma. Norma has now been downgraded to a tropical storm, and it's now beginning to make its landfall on the mainland of Mexico. It hit the Baja Peninsula, been in the California Gulf, now again beginning to make its impacts a little bit stronger there. We'll dive into all that now a little bit more specifically. So Hurricane Tammy, maximum sustained winds, again, the Sunday afternoon update looking at 85 miles an hour. Its movement is currently to the northwest at around 9 miles an hour. So I do want to stress that when we're looking at this forecast track that we're about to examine, the computer models are not in complete consensus on what's happening here. So the Hurricane Center, again, takes all the data that it has available, puts it together, comes up with this particular forecast track. This extending out for the next 5 days, and you can see kind of taking a little bit of a curve, almost going to end up looking a little bit like a backwards question mark almost, is with the way this is going to kind of curve around a little bit, it looks like. And we'll look at a specific model here in just a moment and kind of see the trend, but overall, just to let you know that there's not a consensus. Some models have it going out much further over to the east. Some models have it going much of a sharper turn and making a much more of a westerly track instead of that curvature track. But this is kind of what we're dealing with for right now. It looks like it'll maintain its hurricane strength for the next 3 to 4 days and then finally begin its weakening once it gets a little further to the north. So the folks up in Bermuda are definitely keeping an eye on things quite closely here. Otherwise, the Leeward Islands are thankful that this thing is on its way out. The tropical storm force warnings that are in place because of the winds there are also continuing to be moving a little bit more. Now, Norma, as I mentioned, was a hurricane, became a tropical storm, and really within the last 12 hours or so has gotten a little bit more organized and strengthened a little bit more. So it got back up over water. It made its landfall over on the peninsula, gets over here into the Gulf, gets a little bit more strength to it, and those winds have increased back up to 65 miles an hour. So actually pretty close to a hurricane strength before it makes its mainland landfall. And you can see again the warnings that are in place there for the tropical storm warnings. They're expecting the winds to stay below hurricane strength. Our forecast cone, normally it goes out 5 days, right? Well, we're not expecting it to keep tropical characteristics for more than about a day. So that's why we've only got one sort of notch here on where we're expecting it to go and beginning to fall apart. So Norma is on the downside of things, but still creating some life-threatening flash flooding. The winds are still dangerous. Storm surge is still dangerous. Everything that a tropical system can bring, it's still happening, but it is beginning to weaken. By 1 p.m. tomorrow, it probably will begin to lose. It'll be a tropical depression and start to lose its tropical characteristics completely past 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. So again, that movement is fairly slow right now at 3 miles an hour and the wind speed at 65 miles an hour. But all of the moisture that's associated with Norma is going to begin to impact the state of Texas and other portions of the U.S. as well. This is our GFS, this futurecast that we're going to look at. You'll notice we're looking at accumulation of rainfall, quite a bit of rainfall right where we're seeing Norma make its landfall. But as we progress through time up into Wednesday and Thursday, look, all of this rain is coming from that moisture getting pulled up in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And there'll be some interactions with some other things happening as well. But again, that's all that Pacific moisture, more or less what would be the remnants of Norma, is creating quite a bit of rain for portions of the U.S. And as I mentioned, we're here in Texas, so we're definitely needing some more rain. And we're thankful, especially over the central portions of the state, to be accumulating that 2 to 4 inches of rain that's a possibility in that particular expectations. Here's the Euro model forecast. This is back out in the Atlantic. Here's Tammy. Remember the Leeward Islands? We're getting all the rain, still getting some rain. The stronger winds, that circulation, this track is pretty similar to what the Hurricane Center is expecting as it moves off a little bit to the northeast, and then it'll curve back around more or less towards Bermuda. Now, what happens here? There's, again, a lot of question marks. Some expectations take some of that bulk of the organization further over to the east, and some of it dives it down. You'll see all of this rain that's associated a little bit further to the south. Well, we'll really need to just watch how this one unfolds, because that certainty isn't really there, because that consensus with the models really isn't there. Quick reminder on where we are in the hurricane season. Remember, when we talk about hurricane season, we talk about 6 months out of the year, June through November, all the way through November, where we see most of the tropical activity. Not that you can't have tropical activity outside of these 6 months, but this is when we see most of it. Historically speaking, we're really watching the numbers drop down here as we're getting toward the end of October. And once we get into November, there's quite a few activity that really is expected. But this has been an active year. We had a big lull in the middle of the year, specifically August, when we normally expect to see more activity, and we just didn't see it. But once we got into September, then things really began to ramp up, and we showed those typical numbers, those number of storms that we've had, and the names were on the name events. Remember, that's way down at the bottom of the list. So it's certainly been an active year. It just has not had a lot of landfalls in the U.S., and it hasn't really had those numbers throughout the year. We've really condensed this to September and portions of October, and again, we're beginning to wrap that up in October. All right, I mentioned the global expectations of folks who are watching. Again, really glad to connect with you and glad that you're watching. I don't always get here on YouTube that often to check and see who's out there and look for comments, so do me a favor. If you want to connect, I'd love to know where you are and just sort of see what's going on in your life a little bit. Use Instagram, @JohnDawson, Fox 26. Find me, follow me. I'm going to look at everyone who follows. I'll look at your account. If it's not private, I'll even sort of look at some stuff. If not, again, it's great. I'm thankful that you've followed me and let me know that you're out there. Connect with me on any of these other forums, media as well. It'd be great to hear from you. And if you want to see more about my hurricane preparedness, here on YouTube, search for Meteorologist John Dawson. That's the best way to find me, Meteorologist John Dawson, here on YouTube. And then you can see all of my hurricane gear tests that give you some ideas to help stay prepared, whether we're in hurricane season or we're not in hurricane season. All right, that'll do it for today's update. As I mentioned before, we will be back tomorrow, a little bit after 4 p.m. Central. Glad that you're checking us out, and we hope that you'll see us again then.